Hello and welcome to this very special programme made exclusively for steam railway readers by Telerail, in which we'll be looking at some great steam action from around Britain on both main lines and at preserved centres. We'll also be highlighting preserved steam in Europe, as well as taking a close look at working steam from around the world, including Poland. Opened in May 1973, the North Yorkshire Moors Railway runs for 18 miles from Gromont through remote moorland to the market town of Pickering. West Country Pacific number 34101 Heartland was on loan from the Great Central Railway at Loughborough. The West Countries were designed in 1945 by Oliver Bulleid for the Southern Railway and originally built in air-smoothed condition. The Moors Line is renowned for its gradients. Trains starting from Gromont face a gruelling 3.5 miles at 1 in 49 to Goathland, the first stop. It means hard work for both locomotive and firemen. North Eastern Railway Class T3 number 901 was built in 1919 for very heavy freight work in the northeast of England and is ideally suited to these steep gradients. This section of railway opened in 1865 and replaced a rope-worked incline graded at 1 in 10 which operated from 1836. Its course is still visible and serves today as a footpath, one of the most popular walks in the national park. Built in 1943 by the North British for the Ministry of Supply in the Second World War, this 210 was rescued from Greece and after restoration worked first at the Mid-Hants Railway. It moved to the Moors Line in 1992. All told, 150 examples were built for service both at home and overseas. Familiar to many people from its appearances in television's Heartbeat, where it serves as the fictional town of Aidensfield, this is Goathland. The station is over 130 years old and handles more passengers today than its builders would ever have dreamed possible. Trains arriving at Goathland make an impressive sight, storming up the 1 in 49 gradient right into the platform, the engines roaring away well into the station. Stania Black 5, number 45428, is named after the late Eric Tracy. one time Bishop of Wakefield and a line-side photographer of almost legendary status. He was very fond of LMS engines and spent many hours at Edge Hill Shed during his ministry in Liverpool. So it's especially fitting that a Stanley locomotive now carries his name. I'm sure the railway bishop would have been absolutely delighted. During long hot summers, there's a high fire risk on the moors, and occasionally steam service has to give way to diesel traction. Always a disappointment to the line's passengers. Sadly, there's no choice in very dry conditions. The bleak splendour of the scenery is a major attraction for the line and offers passengers a wide variety of train and hiking combinations. It was a tough railway to build, even for engineer George Stephenson and his famous navvies. This was once a double-track main line, linking the fishing port of Whitby with the market town of Malton, New York. Newtondale, a glacial valley gouged during the Ice Age, is totally inaccessible by road. Its latter-day halt is popular amongst walkers. Levisham station is fairly remote, and its signal box, one of 4 serving the line today, is a rather lonesome outpost. 8 signal boxes once controlled this railway between Gromont and Pickering. End of the line is Pickering, where the Moor Line's carriage depot is based. It couldn't be any further from the engine shed. Old rivalries die hard. Europe's last standard gauge working steam locomotives could be found in 1995 in Poland, where the museum depot at Wolstein provides power for passenger and freight trains to Poznan, some 81 kilometers away. Sharp, sunny morning in April, a TY45 210 makes a very smoky pass en route to Grodzisk with a stopping mixed train. These Polish steam scenes were all shot during one of Steam Railway's overseas steam weekends. decades after they disappeared in this country, it was still possible in 1995 to enjoy a steam-hauled mixed train going about its business. One of the impressive high-stepping OL-49 262 tender engines rolls briskly past, bound for Waldstein. Several times a year, usually in spring and autumn, Steam Railway offers weekend trips to East Germany and Poland to see the last working steam in Europe. You can bash it from the line side, chase it aboard special buses, or fling the train windows open wide and enjoy the sight and sound at first hand. The trips are usually advertised a couple of months in advance, so place a regular order for Steam Railway to ensure you don't miss out, as they book up very quickly. If you'd like to see more of what's on offer, there's a special edition of Telerail's New Horizons series on sale featuring Eastern European steam. Details follow at the end of this programme. It's not often possible to see two A4s nose to nose, let alone out on the main line together. Yet that's exactly what happened over the Eastern Counties Steam Weekend on June the 24th and 25th. There was even the added bonus of number 70,000 Britannia involved too. Union of South Africa, completed in 1937, was originally to have been named Osprey. But as this was the year of the coronation of King George VI, the 5 A4s, earmarked for the LNER's fabulous new King's Cross Edinburgh Expresses, were given suitably patriotic names of countries of the British Empire. Sir Nigel Gresley was bought direct from BR in 1966. The 21st A4 to be built, she was the 100th Gresley Pacific completed by Doncaster Works. She was outshopped in November 1937 and named at a ceremony at Marylebone Station on the 26th of that month. Always a particularly strong steamer and free runner, in May 1959 she set a post-war speed record for steam of 112 miles an hour, with a Stephenson Locomotive Society special descending Stoke Bank, the very same racing ground where sister engine Mallard set her all-time pre-war record. Union of South Africa ended its BR career in Scotland on the renowned Glasgow-Aberdeen Expresses, before being preserved by Scottish farmer John Cameron. Not so long ago, it was every schoolboy's dream to be an engine driver, and this is why. To join the crew of an A4 on the main line at speed is a great privilege and truly an experience to savour. The driver is Archie Plum, a veteran of 40 years' experience. He worked on steam from 1954 at Cambridge and recently enjoyed a steam refresher at the Midhants Railway in January this year. He's normally to be found driving commuter trains to King's Cross. Fireman Peter Cornwall started as a cleaner, also at Cambridge, in 1955 and worked through the grades to driver after 17 years' service. These days he's usually driving EUs from Cambridge to Liverpool Street, although his lifelong ambition is to pass as mainline steam driver before he retires. Also in the cab is John Cameron, the popular owner of this racing thoroughbred, which is now run in most parts of the country as a preserved mainline engine. Maximum line speed for the A4 today is 75 miles an hour, and here the streak is cruising effortlessly at 70 miles an hour, men and machine in perfect harmony. This very traditional scene hasn't changed for generations. The driver has his eyes glued to the road ahead, glimpsed along the sleek sides of the streamlined casing, whilst the fireman goes through the endless round of tending the fire, filling the boiler, hosing down dust, and generally keeping the cab spick and span. And when he isn't doing that, the rulebook insists that he helps the driver watch for signals. And so into Ely, having run the 40 miles from Bishop Stortford in a steady 53 minutes. Despite being Midsummer's Day, it's cold and grey with a northeast wind across the fens. And it's not only train spotters who need their anoraks on. Sir Nigel Gresley, flashing through the countryside between Ely and Bishop Stortford, rekindles memories of lineside days on the East Coast Main Line, when Gresley's streamlined A4s really were at the cutting edge of transport technology. Small wonder that young boys were so enthralled. Sir Nigel Gresley was withdrawn in February 1966 and preserved by the A4 Locomotive Society. Every 7 years, a mainline locomotive requires an overhaul costing around £100,000. Keeping large locomotives hard at work at high speed is a very expensive business. Gresley's streamlined design, said to have been inspired by Bugatti, is every bit as impressive in its Diamond Jubilee year of 1995 as it was when it set the railway world alight in September 1935. Sir Nigel Gresley and Union of South Africa are the only A4s currently in working order. Bittern is undergoing overhaul at the Great Central Railway, however, and is due to return as Class Pioneer Silver Link, hopefully with an LNER varnished teak train before the end of the century. All the way from Tournon to Le Mastre, the line closely parallels the River Doubs. This spectacular section near Mordan is also one of the most inaccessible. The line here is about to disappear into a short tunnel, while the river twists and turns between precipitous outcrops. Although the Vivarais system was a heavy loss-maker in its original form, today's rejuvenated service between Tournon and Le Mastre does manage to cover its costs, thanks largely to the considerable amount of volunteer labour given by the line's supporters. All told, the Vivarais has only a dozen or so full-time employees, and the management of the line is carried out entirely by volunteers. It's hardly surprising that this combination of exceptional scenery and steam should prove to be so popular. The summer season train service includes one return steam-hauled trip between Tournon and Le Mastre each day of the week, plus up to 3 railcar-operated services. Not all passengers stay on board to the end of the line. Not very surprisingly, many French people prefer to make the most of the traditional wine-tasting opportunities at Saint-Barthélemy-le-Point, one of the attractive intermediate stations. The rather curtailed journey will then be completed by returning direct to Tournon by railcar. One of the UK's longest established preserved lines is the Keighley and Worth Valley Railway, which actually opened in 1968, before the end of everyday steam on BR in August of that year. The steep climb out of Keighley has been a magnet for photographers since day one. Oakworth is probably best known for its starring role in The Railway Children, made incredibly over 25 years ago now. The Worth Valley was the first preserved railway to benefit from regular film work. How many people remember the wallpapered Black 5 from the Solvite TV advert? The Worth Valley's proud boast is that it is a complete branch, running from original junction station to original terminus. Although just 5 miles long, the railway has 6 stations and halts as it threads the valley bottom from end to end, winding around the contours. To the Railway Children. Many people will recognise this as the location where a tree marched down the hillside in a very strange way to block the line in front of the old gentleman's train. This is the approach to Mytham's Tunnel. Much of the line's success was rooted in the line's proximity to the Bronte country and industry around Haworth. Engineering nerve centre of the Worth Valley is Haworth, where locomotive repairs are carried out. Known as Top Field, this classic location is very popular for photographing trains running between Haworth and Oxenhope. Some Worth Valley engine men like to put on a show here for the crowds, but on this occasion the Great Western Pannier creates a more realistic branch line impression by simply ambling past. Comparative newcomer, the whirling wind-driven generator rather spoils the scenery around Haworth as Stania 8F number 48431 makes haste towards Oxenhope with its neatly painted maroon train. End of the line, Oxenhope is a classic country terminus of a type once very common all over the United Kingdom, but now sadly largely extinct. In the far north of Germany, on the coast near Rostock, is the famous Bad Doberan-Kühlungsborn line, the famous Molly. Operated by a fleet of 210-2Ts, the line is built to the unusual gauge of 900mm, unique today on the DB system. Services start at Kühlungsborn, although there are sheds at both ends of the 15.5-kilometre line. The last 5 kilometres of the branch are actually on the coast, although the lie of the land means that you can't actually see the Baltic from the trains. The railway was built to serve the local spa, and until 1910 ran only in summer, there being no freight until that time. For much of the 20th century the line was very busy indeed. Until 1989, around 750,000 tourists and about 500,000 locals travelled each year, although this has declined since. Nowadays it's mainly visitors and school children who use the trains, which also pass through about 6 kilometres of forest. DR took over the line in 1920 and freight continued until 1969 when the costs of transshipment forced its withdrawal. Normally, the Saxon narrow-gauge lines used transporter wagons, but on the Molly, all goods had to be transshipped into narrow-gauge vans because of this line's most famous feature, the kilometre or so of street running in Bad Doberan. railway runs through the suburbs, between the trees and houses, and finally squeezes through the very narrow main street of shops, seemingly with just inches to spare. No one knows why the Molly earned its nickname, but there are plenty of local stories and suggestions. Trains are limited to 10 kilometres an hour in Bad Doberan, with a maximum of 50 kilometres an hour elsewhere. All track was relayed on the branch between 1982 and 1988. To British eyes, working steam is rare. But working steam in the middle of the high street? Little short of amazing, yet it happens day in, day out in Bad Doberan in northern Germany. Branches like these are classic targets for the Steam Railway weekend visits, so do keep a close eye on the magazine for the next opportunity to sample real working everyday steam. There really is no substitute. Britannia is certainly attracting plenty of attention as the loco prepares to work the 1216 Bishop Stortford to Ely. Driver Joe Bygrave and fireman Dennis Crouch, himself once a driver at King's Cross, were backed up by Britannia support footplateman Steve Broom.
Back to me, shot off. I'll have a look at the arrow. Right?
The Britannias were, of course, on their home ground in East Anglia, for the first batch, including Britannia herself, went straight to Stratford Shed in 1951, and for the next decade, a stud of more than 20 of the class was shedded there and at Norwich. Overnight, the Britannias lifted the Liverpool Street Norwich line from the 3rd Division, as it were, of British passenger services, straight into the Premiership. Driver Joe Bygrave, a former Stratford man, knew these engines well. "60 miles an hour is the maximum speed permitted today." Number 70,000 emerged from crew works in January 1951, and as the flagship of the British Railways Standard Fleet, and it being Festival of Britain year, she was named Britannia as a suitably patriotic statement. The name was actually purloined from Newton Heath Jubilee class number 45700, which was then renamed Amethyst, in honour of the warship then very famous after her recent escape from the Chinese communists down the Yangtze River. A refreshing cup of tea is a necessity when working in such a hot and dusty environment. Britannia was withdrawn by BR in May 1966, ironically from Manchester's Newton Heath shed, longtime home of a former Jubilee namesake. Scheduled for special maintenance and then preservation by the British Railways Board, she was stored for a time at Preston Park Works near Brighton, but suffered vandalism, and the official choice was switched to the newly overhauled number 70013, Oliver Cromwell.
Well, I hope you don't say anything.
All trains were booked to run non-stop, so driver Joe Bygrave needs to be particularly vigilant as he eases Britannia past the crowded platforms at Cambridge. In the autumn of 1969, more than a year after the end of steam, Britannia was finally rescued and moved to the Severn Valley by the Britannia Locomotive Company Limited. 3 years of neglect and vandalism in store had taken their toll, and it was not until May 1978 that she was steamed once more and renamed by her designer Robert Riddles. In 1980 she moved to the Nene Valley Railway, and then, following a rebuild at Carnforth, she ran her first preserved mainline trip from Crewe to Hereford and back in July 1991. The cab was one aspect of the Britannias that wasn't altogether a resounding success, crews complaining that they were drafty. They were also considered rather hard-riding locomotives, but overall they were efficient, reliable and free steaming, while their two-cylinders, as against the 3 or 4 more usual on engines of this size, successfully saved weight and eased maintenance. Journey's End is Ely, where number 9 is waiting to take the return working.
Yeah, she's just holding that little bit in him. Yeah, pull that angle down when we get the magnet. Yeah.
It's certainly been an exhilarating run, and a tribute to the hard work that's been put in by everyone concerned with the Eastern Counties Steam Weekend. Everyday steam is still comparatively common here in the northeast of China, at Harbin. Harbin is the provincial capital of Heilongjiang province, some 1,400 kilometers by rail northeast of Beijing. Traffic south from Harbin departs from Sankong Chao Yard. Although steam is still in evidence at Harbin, the vast majority of traffic south towards Shenyang has been diesel-hauled for some time now. Rail resources are stretched to the limit at Harbin's principal station, which is at present being extensively enlarged. The area immediately to the northeast of Harbin is a particularly good hotspot, as the lines to Nanchar and Manzhouli form a triangle just outside of the station. The line from Harbin to Manzhouli was opened in 1903 by the Russian-owned Chinese Eastern Railway as a 5-foot gauge route. After a long history of different owners, this important through route for rail freight to Russia was finally doubled in 1991. Typical mixed goods trains still often include sheeted wagons, a practice that's long since all but died out in most of Western Europe. At times it can get so busy that it's literally difficult to know in which direction to look first. Nearly all the traffic is wagon load, and consists often include timber from the huge forested area to the north around Nanchar. Another potential hotspot in the Harbin area is here, about 5 kilometres into the suburbs northeast of the city centre. Close to here, the line north from Harbin joins the avoiding line from Changchun via an overbridge, before passing on to Nanchar and Jiamusi. The 500-kilometre route to Jiamusi was built between 1936 and 1948. Today, the bulk of the rail freight from Nanchar south to Harbin is diesel-hauled, but there's still the odd QJ-worked example like this to be seen. Steam motive power for the Harbin area is drawn from the depot, which is situated close to the main station at Harbin. There's always plenty of activity going on, although predictably these days most of the locos to be found on shed are QJs. After coaling, locos are prepared across a typical open 4-road grid. Ash and clinker are shovelled out by hand at Harbin depot. Not particularly surprising when, even in these inflationary days, labour is still comparatively cheap. What is perhaps a little more unusual, particularly to our Western eyes, are the number of ladies still delegated to perform this thankless task. The recognition of the role played by women as manual workers in a communist society is one aspect of the now largely discredited Cultural Revolution that still seems to be just as relevant today. Strangely enough, this emancipation doesn't appear to have reached the footplate, and to date we've yet to see any lady loco crews. Steam motive power has a reputation amongst many managers for being slow and difficult to organise efficiently. In particular, steam locos have to spend far more unproductive time on shed than modern diesels. However, here at Harbin, coaling and watering operations are just about as slick and efficient as they could possibly be, with engines quickly and efficiently prepared for the road. Sadly, the 1995 summer steam programme was decimated by one of the driest, hottest summers since records began. The ambitious tour schedules planned by Waterman Railways and Days Out were both restricted and then completely suspended as the temperatures soared and the fire risk grew. There were some highlights earlier in the year. On March the 3rd, number 6024 King Edward I on a mainline swan song trip before withdrawal for overhaul at a secret site somewhere in England. April the 1st, 1995 saw Waterman Railways run its first steam special with Southern Railways 460 Sir Lamiel from Waterloo to Southampton Docks and Portsmouth. British Rail's Special Trains unit had officially passed into Waterman Railways ownership at midnight on March the 31st. Part of the National Collection, Sir Lamiel was repainted into British Railways Brunswick Green livery in November 1994. Following an extensive restoration from Barry Scrapyard condition at Eastleigh Works, Southern Railway S15 Class 460 number 828, built in 1927, is a relative newcomer to the main line. Sporting correctly positioned head code discs indicating a Waterloo-bound train, 828 and 30777 depart from the recently rebuilt station at Guildford on their return journey. Following an extensive overhaul, Merchant Navy Pacific Clan Line returned to the main line in 1994. The engine has been modified by the addition of air brakes, which allow it to work the Venice Samplon Orient Express stock, here en route to Canterbury on May the 28th, 1995. Its train, recreating the Golden Arrow boat trains of the 1950s, was popular, and similar trips are planned for later in 1995 and 1996. "1995 has been a year of groundbreaking specials. After a 10-year absence, steam returned to Plymouth in April with BR Standards 75014 and 70,000 Britannia. The duo make a spirited departure from Plymouth for London Paddington on their return run. The authentic combination proved to be a sellout, and plans are in place which will shortly see the locomotives return to the West Country. Days Out broke new ground in spring 1995 when Black 5's George Stephenson worked a passenger special from St Pancras to Stockport, the first steam departure from the Midland Railway's London terminus since the end of BR Steam. May the 13th, 1995, Duke of Gloucester, the last express passenger locomotive built by British Railways, charges down the East Coast Main Line with a special from King's Cross to Stockport. Just what the long-term future holds for mainline steam in the UK is still not at all clear. Be sure to read Steam Railway each month, when we'll continue to bring you up to date with all the latest news and information, highlighting the power of steam. Bye for now. Whatever your special railway interest, Telerail are certain to have something for you in our comprehensive range. Look out for these other superbly made documentary titles from Telerail, your guarantee of top quality railway entertainment. New Horizons presents for the first time ever on one superb programme all the information you'll need to plan. The series is bang up to date with a representative selection of contemporary action in each country, featuring both modern traction and preserved steam. It's the ideal way to expand your railway interests, even if you only intend exploring New Horizons from the comfort of your own armchair. Based on the personal experience of the Telerail team, each carefully scripted volume also includes our unbiased recommendations and useful advice on the best places to visit, accommodation, travel details and typical costs. Even how to use local phone systems. In fact, everything needed to make a visit abroad successful. If you're planning a visit solely to watch trains or to combine a trip with other holiday activities, New Horizons is certain to prove an invaluable guide. Look out for the Steam World Archive series, featuring 100% authentic and original BR working steam, just the way it really was. Every programme benefits from an informative script and accurate steam locomotive sounds, with every scene painstakingly matched to the correct and authentic sound of Loco Class taken from the renowned Peter Handford collection. Volume 1, Steaming Back to the Northwest, features nostalgic action on the West Coast Main Line from Preston to Carlisle, including Shap, T-Bay and over the troughs in the beautiful Lune Valley. There's also plenty of activity on the Settle to Carlisle line, including both passenger and heavy freights over the long drag, contrasted with some lesser-known rural delights, including the Glasson Dock and Windermere branches. Mostly filmed during the final years of BR Steam, there's a good selection of evocative shed views at Lostock Hall, Rosegrove and Carnforth. Classes featured hard at work ranged from humble Black 5s and 8Fs to Duchesses, Britannias, 9Fs and Royal Scots. Volume 2, Steaming Back to the Southern, vividly recalls mainline steam on the Waterloo-Weymouth route during the period from 1964 to 1967. From the humble commuter train to express passenger workings and the prestigious Bournemouth Bell, it's all here. Branch line steam isn't forgotten either, with visits to the Lymington branch, plus pick-up freight action on the Ringwood branch. There's also steam on shed at Nine Elms, Eastleigh and Bournemouth. As well as Merchant Navy, West Country, Battle of Britain, Q1, Lord Nelson and S15 classes, you'll also see many of the BR standards, including Ivat, 2MT, 4MT, 5MT and 9Fs, all hard at work. Volume 3, steaming back to Lancashire and Yorkshire, will be out soon. So turn back the clock with Telerail and enjoy the authentic sights and sounds of yesterday.